feature is Donkey Kong Country Returns, a retrospective. So this is continuing on our Donkey Kong Country retrospective series, where we will go through all of the 5 mainline Donkey Kong Country games. I will have a debate with Swinny at the end of it if we go through Donkey Kong Land, but that's not the mainline series. And yeah, so Donkey Kong Country Returns really, first on the Wii back in 2010, really trying to revitalize the series after about 11 years, 12 years of it not being available and no other games. So, we're going to go through this game, really get our thoughts, and then just sort of, I think one key thing is really see if it sort of lives up to the Donkey Kong Country name, which I think was pretty esteemed, especially in the SNES era. So, Mike, I think that probably the important thing to call out, you haven't played the Donkey Kong Country trilogy on the SNES at all, if that's correct?
I'm doing the entire review in Monkey Talk.
Okay, where's that mute button? I'm just looking for it.
No, I have not. I have not played the previous titles, not properly. I mean, I dabbled in them, but not properly compared to this one. And with this one, I grabbed both the Wii and the 3DS version and played them both.
Yeah, which I think is it's actually a pretty cool perspective because I think Swinny and I, given that we played those games when we were kids, you can't remove the fact that we just have nostalgia for them. And I feel like I pretty much can never judge games that I played as a kid fairly or accurately because it's always from that context of playing them when I was a kid. So
I'm the objective third party in all of this.
Yeah, and how objective you really are is always a debate for me. But
yeah, I'm going to try to be very objective about this.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to cover off in the intro, Swinny, before we jump into game feel controls?
So I just wanted to say that, so this came out both Wii and 3DS. So it's developed by Retro Studios.
At different times.
Not Rare, because and as of the release date in November 2010, they had been owned by Microsoft for quite some time. So Retro Studios, most well known for the Metroid Prime series, took over the reins from Rare. So they had quite a task ahead of themselves to follow up such a beloved series.
Yes, and to point out, the Wii game came first in 2010, and then the 3DS version came out in 2013. And there are some differences between them that I might as well quickly mention, other than obviously the 3D part. But I think, to me, the most significant difference, other than the controls as well, is a few little quality of life changes, like getting 3 health hearts instead of 2 on the original Wii version. And I think that, may or may not change the way the game feels.
And that's per character.
And the difficulty.
That would have made the game so much easier.
Which makes it so much easier, because there were parts from oh my God, do you want to go into talking about the game feel and the controls?
Let's bring the differences up, as we go through, because I think the main differences will come through the controls difficulties and the levels, and that's really it. So just maybe we'll start off with the game feel and controls. So for me, I really truly felt I felt like this was a Donkey Kong Country game, because that's always an interesting thing when and we always have this joke around Assassin's Creed and the new series of Assassin's Creed. Is it actually feel like an Assassin's Creed game? If the new series of Assassin's Creed games were developed by a different developer, I think you'd get a lot of arguments from people saying, oh, they're not really Assassin's Creed games. I do, for me, feel like in 2010, this is a genuine Donkey Kong Country game. It wasn't made by Rare, but to me, it really captures that feel. As for the controls, I really felt like I was always battling the controls in this game. And I'd played the Wii version and the 3DS version. For me, prefer the 3DS version. But I still feel that, just the fact that you can't remap the buttons. Some of the buttons, I don't like how they're placed. I don't like the roll being on the R trigger, because it's sort of, I don't know. I've got the smaller version of the new 3DS.
God, I'd love roll to be on a button. I'd love roll.
I thought this is the
Wii version. Yeah.
Roll isn't a button for me.
I don't like it. I'm saying I don't like it because I don't feel like on my 3DS it triggers accurately enough.
But what is it for you? So for me, it was you hold forward in a direction and you press the Y button.
On the Wii, you have to waggle the controller.
On the Wii, it's so bad. It's hard. I did not enjoy it at all on the Wii. So I started playing it on the Wii. And first of all, okay, I guess I'm not used to the Wii controls because I haven't played the Wii for so many years.
Yeah.
But even so, I just found it didn't feel responsive enough. And the best comparison was and I don't know if it's a lag induced thing as well, or it's a timing thing, or what the heck it is. But you guys know when you go to the secret areas where you can collect, you have to collect all the bananas and the coins and
Yeah.
the balloons
Yeah.
in like 20 seconds or something. I kept missing and not being able to get the timing right when you jump up from the barrel as the barrel was moving left across the screen. My timing was always slightly off, so I wouldn't be able to get it. The moment I played it on the 3DS, got it no problem. It's almost like there's this extra lag or something that my brain wouldn't compensate for very easily on the Wii version. And in terms of the controls as well, it's kind of cool that it's a tactile thing, and you're able to, if you want to do the ground pound, you got to whack, or you got to like move both of the controllers. That's kind of cool, but it just makes it so much harder for a game that's already fairly hard.
Yeah.
That the controls end up just making the game even harder just because of the way the controls are.
Because Swinny, you only played it on the Wii. You can play it either Wiimote just by itself, so it's like on the side, like
God,
a NES controller.
That would be horrible.
Or you can play as Wiimote and with the nunchuck.
Yeah.
So how did you play it?
Yeah, so definitely Wiimote and nunchuck. And I just want to say, just first of all, before I start getting into the negative stuff, is that I love how smooth the game feels. When I didn't experience what you're saying at all, Mike, in terms of like the actual button inputs or anything. I had no issues with that, with one exception, which I'll get to in a second, that kind of combines with the motion controls. The game, to me, does feel very different from the SNES games, but not in a bad way. So the pace, the feel of the game is almost perfect for speed runs. If it wasn't for the control thing, just you constantly feel like you're moving unless you are looking for secrets. And any time that the game forced you to stop, to me, that the flow or the feel suffered because of that. And I noticed that the most when I was kind of rushing through the last few worlds to make sure I'd beaten the game before before the show, is that anytime it felt like you had to stop and do something, it just didn't. I just wanted to keep moving, but oh my god, the Wii controls are just terrible. They are terrible. Like first of all, that waggle. So it's the same action to roll, to ground pound, and to blow air. All exactly the same action. So obviously for ground pound, you're just standing still. For roll, you have to be moving forward, and for blowing air, you have to be ducking. The problem with the ducking thing, this is the biggest thing I had, is that I generally, when I'm using a Wii nunchuck, and I hadn't played it in a while, but I'm generally pretty relaxed with my hands, where my left hand that's holding the nunchuck is kind of on an angle a bit. So a lot of the times I will go to press down, but because of the way the nunchuck feels, I don't actually press down all the way because it's like on an angle. And the problem is that, look, that is me, but I also don't want to sit there like a robot holding them exactly upright, because that doesn't feel right. It's just, to me, that whole blow air thing, take that away from the game, it loses absolutely nothing. To me, it was the most...
Honestly, I didn't even know you could blow air on the Wii version.
You can blow air on both.
Yeah,
I know that, but it's only when I played the 3DS version that I figured out you could actually do it.
So
I didn't even know what the control for blowing air was on the Wii.
What would happen is that I would like I'd go to do a ground pound, to blow air, and I'd roll off the edge of the stage. All the time.
I've had that.
Whoever made the decision, and I don't think it was Retro Studios, of absolute stupid design choice to not allow the Wii Pro controller to be used for this game, can go to hell.
Yeah.
It almost ruined what is otherwise a really good game.
Oh yeah, this game would be so much better if they just allowed that.
So, but the problem, the trade-off is, I would definitely prefer to play it with buttons. But then the thing is, you don't, obviously, the 3DS version, obviously, which I haven't played, comes with a lot more to it. But then you're not playing it on TV in 60 frames, so it's like, oh man.
Yeah. But imagine if you could have the best of both worlds. Play it on TV at 60 frames and use a normal controller, so you don't make dumb things where you just roll off the edge just because the controls are shit.
So how did you feel swapping between like all that? Like, did you, when you played the Wii version, did you have issues with that and you moved to the 3DS?
Yeah, and I think I've said this to you guys before you started playing the game, because I played it quite a bit on both platforms. I really genuinely feel like there's no perfect platform to play this game. Like, there are trade-offs with the 3DS version. It chugs sometimes. So, as much as, I've got super high frame rate, high refresh rate monitors. Like, one's, I don't know, 180 and the other one's 165 or something like that. So, I care a lot about that stuff, but I can play a game if it's a solid 30. Like if it's locked 30, I can get into it and play through it. And it's not as good as the 60, but I can play it. But the thing I hated about like the 3DS is it chugged at certain points of the game. It dropped to like 20s, even maybe high teens frame rate. And it really like affects the game. It makes it so hard to control. And it's always the critical parts whenever it started to chug. So it's really tough. Like I found the game, I think the biggest thing is why they didn't allow it to have a Pro controller, like the Wii Pro controller as a playable option. It seems to just make no sense why they would have done that. Because if you're making this game, you definitely would want people to play it in the best way possible. So I think probably ultimately still I go on the 3DS route.
Same.
But just going to like the game feel again, like the one thing that kind of frustrated me is, and it goes into the thing about sluggishness. Like they talk about this game being Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. And, it's like obviously in the title, Donkey Kong Returns. Donkey Kong wasn't in the last 2 games of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy. You can only play as Dixie, Diddy, and Kiddy Kong. So, yes, it makes sense that Donkey's back, but I've always hated Donkey. And I've always said that. Like, I don't like playing him in these games. And I must admit, for a second thought, wait, can I play as Diddy Kong in this? And it's like, oh no, he just rides on the back with a jetpack.
Yeah.
And I just really don't like controlling Donkey Kong. Like, I played through the game, really enjoyed it, but ultimately I still would rather have played as Diddy Kong or someone else in this game rather than as Donkey Kong.
Oh, you know what it is I think about it as well, and maybe this is overdone, is that DK feels like he's got some momentum to him.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool thing to include. The problem is then it becomes, I don't even know what the word for it is. It's not as accurate. There's certain times when you say I try to jump onto a character, but because of the momentum, I end up getting hit by the character again. It's hard to even describe it. It just felt like the controls weren't tight enough. But they weren't tight enough almost intentionally. They weren't tight enough because of the momentum that character had that was hard to get used to.
I think they are tight. It's just, and maybe let's transition to the difficulty.
Oh, sorry. I just want to talk quickly about the Diddy stuff before we
Yeah, sure. Go.
So I really liked the Diddy mechanic at first. I thought, okay, this is a way to, it's a change, right? You're not swapping between them. And then I grew to think that it was a really bad design choice for a very specific reason. So later on in the game, there's certain levels with a lot more pitfalls and lava where you'll die straight away. So you'll have, normally the way it works is you've got Donkey Kong, you find a DK barrel, you get Diddy Kong, so you get an extra set of hearts. But when you lose those hearts, Diddy Kong disappears and you're back to just Donkey.
Yeah.
And when you've got Diddy Kong, as we said, you've got this hover jump. So it's basically jump in the air and then hover.
Super handy.
And it feels completely different from playing normally, like the way you play. And unfortunately what happens is I'm so in the flow of it and I'm so going through and I die in one of those pitfalls. I die completely. I respawn right away just as Donkey Kong and then I jump off the ledge and die because I'm so in the flow of the hover.
Yeah.
So I didn't notice that early on because you're not generally dying in one hit. And I just thought it was, I understood what I'm going for. To me, it just started just really irking me that I just had to readjust how I controlled the character completely each time I died in that situation.
It also seems very strange because it's a bit of a Demon's Souls almost mechanic where if you're not as good as the game, you're more likely to be losing Diddy, right? But when you lose Diddy, the game becomes harder. So the people who are good at the game have Diddy longer, and it's actually easier because you've got the backup jetpack and everything like that. So it totally doesn't reward you in that way.
Yeah, but that's the same as the Master Sword in Zelda, It's like...
Yeah, but it's not as critical. Like, this is a part of the core game. This is every interaction. And I had a different problem than you, Swinny. I had a problem where... And I think it's the way I play platformers, and I've been, I guess, trained or coded to hold the button. Like, I don't know why, but I think in Mario, maybe you jump a bit higher if you hold the button, like the jump button. I would sometimes like jump and I wasn't actually trying to trigger the jetpack and I didn't want the jetpack to get triggered.
Yeah, and I've had that too.
And it triggered and it actually stuffed me up and I died because of it.
Screwed up a few times.
Yeah, and I was like, it just, and I don't think the game at all doesn't feel tight. It's just, I never quite 100% had my head around the momentum and then also just like the way that Donkey moves, and it's because I don't like it as well. I've never liked Donkey in the or Kiddy Kong because he's a bit like Donkey in the series. So, And yeah, do you want to just touch on the difficulty of the game? Because I think it is a little bit related to that.
Yeah, so for me, and everyone's going to be different, and obviously the controls are going to change this, and also the fact that you get extra hearts. I didn't know that. That changes
And
things huge.
we should say that Swinny is a god gamer as well.
No.
Yep.
So basically, I found the first 6 worlds were too easy, but they'll probably...
Really?
Wait,
He's such a god
let
gamer.
me clarify. I found the first 6, because it's important for the next thing I'm going to say. I found the first 6 worlds were too easy, but they're probably a good balance for most players, and especially newer players. But then... Sorry, I accidentally hit that. I went, then put my hand
it was
down.
Very dramatic.
No,
it was very dramatic.
it was even like I did a like this. Why I need to get my face cam ready is that I did a hand down. I pressed my space bar and it muted me. Then the last 2 worlds were just frustratingly difficult. It was like it was like what they did to me was they're like, okay, we've finished the first 6 worlds. Let's take the week off and get the intern to make the last 2 worlds. That's the way. Like it just felt
that's
like
rough. That's rough.
Man, they were badly like we'll get to the levels in a second. I've got a whole thing, but basically, I found that it was a good balance for the first 3/4 of the game, and then just went off the walls in the second part.
Because how did you find the difficulty, Mike?
Oh wow, because that's as far as I got. So I think I got up to World 7.
So you got to the
I
easy part.
Easy part. Yeah, I definitely didn't find it easy. The number of times, so let's say I'm new to this game in that sense, and I am playing it on the 3DS, and I've got huge hands, so that in itself
and
is
Mike
a
does have
difficult
massive
thing
hands, like ridiculously
to deal with.
massive hands.
So you're battling cramping, you're battling controls that don't feel tight enough to begin with. So I think as a result of that, there are a few times where the difficulty of the game wasn't so much the game itself; it was just the controls and the physicality of having to play the game, which was the big factor. But in saying all that, I didn't feel like it was super hard or anything. It definitely, felt harder than a Mario game or something like that. And there were certain parts where I went, how the heck are you supposed to really get some of the puzzle pieces? At the start, it seemed easy. And then later on, you go, geez, you have to be so precise with when you do a particular jump. The difficulty for me was actually quite hard. It also didn't feel like, even within the first seven levels or 7 worlds, it didn't feel like it always there wasn't a smooth curve. It felt like there were certain levels that were a lot harder earlier on, and then or midway through, and then the next bunch of things seemed so much easier. And I also got a little frustrated at the difficulty of the minecart levels.
Oh yeah, I'll touch on that soon.
This isn't necessarily something that everyone is, but there were times where I'm like, man, like there's spikes that you have to duck under these spikes, and then you literally get a split second to jump with the card right at the end. And the number of times I jumped too early and died because I would wreck those spikes.
Can I ask?
Like I would lose like 30 lives in one go.
Can I ask? Is the not so much that specific thing, but it's also the fact that you're playing it on a 3DS and it's a lower frame rate.
It's absolutely. The frame rate.
The frame rate screws you up as well. Absolutely kills you.
We'll get to the. Maybe we'll talk about that when we talk about the Minecraft level.
That kills you. The cramping, the fact that I'm basically holding the 3DS like this because it's so tiny. Yeah, all those things just did not make it an enjoyable experience from a difficulty perspective. Overall, and we'll talk about it in the overall thoughts. It was an enjoyable experience. It's just the difficulty wasn't difficult because the game's difficult, like say Dark Souls, where they give you tight controls. The only reason you screwed up is because you screwed up. No, this is like I'm fighting the controls and I'm fighting the frame rate and I'm fighting things that have nothing to do with the game itself in that sense.
Yeah. Look, like, first off, the game is hard, right? For the era it came out, 2010, the game was hard. It's not NES hard, and also the context is, Swinny's a god tier gamer. Phil Spencer himself nominated and invited personally Swinny to join the Xbox Hall of Fame. So
I'm like, I understand, but to me, it's like the first part of the game isn't at all. It's the second half.
No, but dude, like that's just like going. Roger Federer goes, plays a bit of squash. Oh, this is not too bad of a game. It's pretty easy. It's like I genuinely, you're very good at, especially platformers. That's your like specialty. You're very good at platformers. So, 100% this game is hard for its era. It's not NES hard. So from that scale, like as any NES game, it's probably like easy. It's not hard in the NES level, but yeah, like as a game that came out in 2010, definitely a hard game. The thing I just didn't like about it is like about the difficulty is 100% agree with you, Mike. I felt like I'm either battling the Wiimote or I'm battling the 3DS to just convey what I'm trying to do. Like sometimes when I'm trying to press the shoulder button, the R shoulder button, like it just wasn't triggering sometimes. And that's probably on me to some degree, but I don't know. I just found it like really frustrating to play at times. And I did find the game to be cheap in the way that Donkey Kong Country was cheap, like number one. Whereas I felt like number 2 and 3, they removed a lot of that cheapness out of the game. And I'm not sure if it's a bit of an homage to the fact that the first game was a little bit cheap at some point.
That's an interesting statement because, yeah, we'll get into the whole Donkey Kong Country 1 comparison.
Yeah. I don't know. Like my views, maybe it's a bit of an element, but I didn't ever think that was a good thing in Donkey Kong Country 1. And I said that before. And the last thing is, before we move on to the levels is, man, the world checkpoints drive me nuts in this game. And you wouldn't have faced this, Swinny, because you just breeze through the game in like 3 hours. But for me, like where they put some of the checkpoints where you had to restart stuff, it's like, why are you making me go through 15 seconds of the level where there's no difficulty? It's just like going into the minecart or something. Like it was just so annoying. It was just like, why did they place it here? It's almost as if the playtesters were like Swinny and they found the game too easy. So they never got frustrated with it.
I didn't find that to be an issue until those last few worlds. But
yeah, well, that's what I said, right? Because you just didn't.
No,
need the
but also just I think the fact that I just think they were more poorly placed in the last few worlds as well.
Nah, I totally don't disagree. I could show you some of the ones where they were placed where you literally have to travel, no joke, like 20 seconds to get to the body of the level where there's no challenge. So why would you place a checkpoint there? It's stupid. So I don't know. I got really pissed at that. But yeah, let's get into the levels. So first off, I just wanted to say that I loved the interplay between the foreground and the background and being able to jump to the background at times and just the way that the levels were set out. I thought the design overall was awesome. But maybe I'll hand to you when you just... what were your highlight levels? What were the levels maybe you didn't like as much?
Well, I've got a lot of notes here, so I don't know. Do you guys want to talk first?
Well, maybe you cover a few and then I'll cover a few just in case we have crossover.
Well, mine's less about specific levels.
Okay.
But I do have a specific level that I did love, which was, let me just find it.
Don't say the minecart one.
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Well, do you want me to go first then, Swinny? Or?
Yeah, go first.
So my favorite level overall was Sunset Shore. So that's 1-4. So World 1, level 4. So that's the one where basically everything's a silhouette and you see the red tie of Donkey Kong and the red hat of Diddy Kong.
That was cool.
I just like the design of it and just how they put it all together. It just looked beautiful, just looked gorgeous, that level. And it was just a really cool level to play through. And I think those elements of the game were definitely the strongest parts of the game for me. Just on World 4, fuck, I hate you, World 4. So World 4 is it's like minecart world. It's like almost every single level is a minecart level or like some variation of that. And it's just, I was so over that. Like I actually put the game down for a little bit because I was so sick of it. And I have to say, like, that's where the 3DS was at its worst. Because the minecart levels, I don't know if you experienced it as well, Mike, but it felt like they chugged those minecart levels.
Not so much. Did you play it on the original 3DS or the
on the
XL?
new 3DS. No, not the XL, but the new 3DS. Yeah.
Dang. Wow. So I just played it on the 3DS XL, so not the new 3DS XL.
I think that is the new one, isn't it?
Well, no, there's a new. So there's a 3DS, and then they had the 3DS XL, and then the new 3DS XL. And there's certain games, from my understanding, that only run on the new 3DS XL. So the original 3DS XL can't run those games.
I'm sure there is a 3DS.
Yeah, and then there's
3DS
the 2DS XL.
I don't think there is.
No, there is. There's a 3DS XL. I have one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
So I've got a 3DS XL, but then they revised it and they released the new 3DS XL.
So
and there's certain games that only run on the new 3DS XL, not on the original one.
Yeah,
and
like
then
4
there's
games.
the 2DS XL, which I think supports all of them, but obviously just in 2D, which came after the fact. So, but I look, yeah, absolutely did chug and stuff, but it wasn't. I don't know, like it wasn't necessarily. I didn't notice it to the extent where I go, "This is super horrible." I'm putting it down. but it was absolutely noticeable. But one thing I'd say about the levels, as someone who had never played a Donkey Kong game to this extent, is I actually really like the variation. A lot of platforming games that I think you get nowadays tend to have, different looking levels, but the controls and the mechanics and everything are largely the same. Whereas with something like Donkey Kong, it was really cool that you'd play one level where you're in a cart. You'd play another level where there's a new mechanic kind of introduced. I really feel like there's a real cool variety in the types of levels that you get, if that makes sense, and the mechanics within those levels. So that to me was always interesting because I was always like, okay, what happens next? What's like a cool new thing that I get to experience in the next one? So they keep the core mechanics the same, but that they introduce all these cool new things that I really, really liked. And I think there's very few games nowadays, or at least in recent memory, that had a similar feel to it.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that about the levels.
Yeah, I think for me, it was just that I felt like it was too much of a good thing having so many minecart levels in one world, just one after the other, which was
too much.
They never did that in the original trilogy. And I don't know, it felt like it was kind of a brave thing to do because if they did it well, it would have been like, oh, how cool was that world? But I felt like it was either going to be really good or really annoying. And for me, it just landed on, I'm kind of over this. And I didn't like how cheap the minecart levels were compared to Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. It felt like a lot cheaper. It felt like more in line with Donkey Kong Country 1. So there's some of the highlights. I really like the overworld stuff with like World 7, where you had to activate the 3 switches within the levels, the 3 different levels, to then release the rocket ship. I thought that was such a cool thing. I always love when games play with their levels and then the overworld itself. So yeah, there's like heaps of levels in this game that I did like and thought they were really, really interesting. Maybe, Swinny, are you ready to go through some of yours?
Yeah, so basically, I thought the first 6 worlds had some of the best platforming levels I've ever seen in a platforming game. I thought they had awesome gimmicks, but just as you said, the jumping between the foreground and everything, like the environmental destruction, like the set pieces as you're blasting through ruins with barrels, like there was so much going on, and it looked fantastic. Obviously, I wish it was, we'll get to the graphics in a second, but I'm looking forward to Tropical Freeze. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and I should have called this out already, because have you played Tropical Freeze, Swinny?
No.
So I have. So I feel like I probably should have said that right at the start of the review. I have played Tropical Freeze, so there's a bit of part of me that knows what happens in Tropical Freeze and maybe why I'm extra frustrated about this game without revealing too much. So I am really
in a good way. You're saying
in a good way.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm really interested to see when we cover Tropical Freeze. And just a flag, we're going to do that as part of Donkey Kong's 40th anniversary.
Yep. So
I got to pick that up.
I absolutely loved the minecart levels.
I knew you would. You're such a contrarian.
I thought they were absolutely perfect. To me, they lived up to the legacy. I'm not saying they weren't.
That's true. They did.
Into it.
No,
they were good. They were good.
I thought they would. Let me say my piece. I thought that they found the right balance between trial and error. Unlike, to me, some of like Donkey Kong Country ones are probably the weakest.
Yeah, they're crazy.
And
that one.
to me, this. Like, there were times, like, there was 1 or 2 that was like, okay, that part's particularly hard. But I was kind of happy because, like, I had so many lives at that point. I was happy to almost just, like, have a bit of a challenge. No, but I'll explain the lives thing. I'll explain the lives thing when we get to the bosses. But and I love the World 6 levels, the cliff levels, especially the one with the giant rolling rock you had to run away from.
Oh, yeah, I wrote that down as well.
Yeah, like, some really cool stuff. But then the last 2 worlds came.
So Prehistoric Path in World 6, it was one of my favorites. And Wadey Way, which was 6-3. So 6-2 and 6-3 were, I think that was a highlight of the game for me, those 2 worlds and 2 levels.
So those last 2 worlds, right? This is where this is where most of my notes are. So I already said that, like the change between, to me, like, so we're talking the factory and volcano levels. I think it's volcano.
It is.
They went from, to me, having really smooth design and enemy placement to just horrible trial and error and enemy choices that just don't make sense thematically, but also just horrible for positioning. Like, do you remember those totem monsters that are like have a blue flame around them, so you can't jump on them?
Yes.
But then they spit the things, and then suddenly you're trying to land on platforms with them, but you got to wait for them to spit twice before you can jump on there, so you're just waiting. It's like, what is going on here?
But would you always kill them? Because I would always kill them to get rid of them.
You know why I wouldn't? Is because to blow them, I had to hold the controller down, swaggle the Wii remote, and I was worried I was going to roll into the fucking thing.
That's funny.
So half the time, I did not use roll in most of this game because I've tried to train myself out of doing that.
That makes sense.
But World 8 is particularly bad, and I like you mentioned the switches in World 7. I like the idea of the problem is, and this is on me. I was kind of trying to. I'd almost turned into a speedrunner for the last couple of worlds.
Oh, so you would have skipped. Yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen, but go on.
Exactly. So I played through all 3 levels and then realized those switches were mandatory, then had to replay all 3 levels again. I was like, But I understand.
Because it says it right at the start. There's a big sign at the start. It's basically like, you have to get these.
Oh, part of me's like, surely they're not going to make it. So, okay.
That's funny.
Just things I mentioned before, the stop-start, like that tippy shippy, I think it was, with the cannon doors, when they make you jump back and forth between the cannon doors. I like the idea, but I just, again, it stops the flow. So to me, I didn't like level design. But the absolute worst level is called Bobbing Basalt. Or is it Basalt? Is that how you say it?
What world is it? Level?
World 8.
No, but what level?
I can't
8-3,
remember.
8-4?
It was like maybe 2 levels before the last boss or something. Right?
Okay, I'm just checking it now.
This level, I had so many lives, and I burned through half of them on this one level because of this one section. So it makes you jump through these really tough jumps on these small platforms that are moving up and down, and there's things above that move up and down, so you got to time it right. But then as soon as you land on larger ground, normally a split second you're safe, then it crumbles, and if you're not ready for it, you just die. So you'd go through the section, and you got to remember, by the time I land on this thing, I've got to jump right away, and I kept dying. And then it's like, okay, I got into that flow, and then you land on a platform that has the checkpoint, and there's 2 enemies right there in front of you that are so hard to avoid, and you've only got 1 heart left, because remember, I only had 2 hearts, and each time you respawn at the checkpoint, there's no DK barrel. Like, you have to just, get the timing so perfect just to survive. And I burnt through so many lives. It was one of the worst examples of platforming game design I've ever seen in a game that has so many awesome examples of platforming design.
I know the level. I'm just watching it on YouTube now. Yeah, maybe I just had a lucky run. I didn't find this one too bad.
But you had 3 hearts, though, didn't you?
No. So you can play on 3DS classic mode or the easier mode. So of course I played it on the classic mode.
Okay. All right, I'll take that back. But yeah, to me that was just the worst sin of platform design to me. That whole section. It looked great, but I was just like,
You're talking about the checkpoint. I'm just trying to see where the checkpoint
is. It's basically you jumping through these single platforms. But anyway, that's enough of my rant about it.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, because I did die up to that point and I could see the checkpoint. I'm like, you're kidding me, right?
And it's a really long checkpoint. It takes ages.
But again, this is, I know, because you breeze through the early parts of the game. And I actually am almost keen to play it on the Wii just to see if it feels easier. But again, it's just the checkpoints don't make sense to me in this game. If you're going to have checkpoints, you got to place them where difficulty is, not where the length of sections, if that makes sense. So, yeah, look, I don't disagree that by the time I got into World 7 and 8, I was kind of a bit I felt like the game was a bit overall too long, too many levels. I didn't need this many levels for a platformer.
It was also after midnight in a day when I moved into a new apartment, so I was a bit buggered.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, congrats.
And was there any other levels or worlds you guys wanted to cover or highlight?
No, not necessarily. Like I said, I just think the variation was really cool as someone who hadn't played those kind of games before, because you don't really get that level of variation in levels nowadays in a lot of games. So I thought that was really cool.
Level of variation of levels.
Yes. Level of variation of levels. That's a good show title. So one thing that we wanted to cover next was just the overworld and the secrets, because secrets, especially growing up as a kid with Donkey Kong Country, and this is kind of pre-internet, secrets was a massive thing. And I think we always mentioned that one of our mates when we were growing up, he would always say that you could play as King K. Rool if you typed a certain code or did a certain thing in Donkey Kong Country 2, which we now know is completely false. It's not an Akuma situation where it's buried in the code somewhere, but maybe I'll just cover the secrets and overworld and then throw to Mike and then finally Swinny, because I know Swinny's more the secrets aficionado. But I love the secrets in this game. I played through all of the first world just to see. So it's kind of interesting actually. So each world has its set amount of levels, and if you just go through the normal path, you play those levels. But each world has a level you can unlock through the shop. But then also each world has a level you can unlock through collecting all of the Kong letters from memory in each of the levels.
Do it.
Yeah. And then those levels are next level hard. Like they are way harder. Right. Like they are hard. Right. And if Swinny says they're not hard, I'm going to come and knife him.
I haven't played those levels. I'm sure they are.
No, they are. They're crazy. They're like,
okay,
and as it gets way deep in the game, the levels are like out of control. So I only did World 1 just to see what it was like. And it's kind of a shame that you can't just play them maybe even after you've beaten the whole game, or maybe type a code in or something, because they are really, really cool levels. They're just a bit like, it's a bit like not Kaizo Donkey Kong, but it's not too far off that. It's not that hard, but yeah, it's almost a bit silly the way that they've been structured. So I really love the secrets in this game and the overworld secrets as well. What did you think, Mike?
Well, what I thought is that I didn't unlock any of the secrets.
You didn't know any of them.
The only thing that's close to being a secret, if you could call it that, is trying to find some of the puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how to get to them. So some are purely based on you need to kind of, get to an enemy at a certain point and bounce off their head to be able to reach that thing. And if you kill the enemy prematurely or something, you can't get it, as an example. But other things, I was sitting there going, hey, I thought I got everything. Where is that puzzle piece? So it was quite clever the way they hit a lot of that stuff, and I thought it was really cool. No, but I didn't get to, unfortunately. It feels like the kind of game where if that's the only game that I had back in 2010, and I could dedicate hours and hours and hours on it, I probably would love to go and check out and find all the little secrets and stuff. But because you get, say 10 hours to really play this game nowadays, especially to do a review for it like we did, it's not enough time to go through all of that stuff and figure all that out, unless you're super good at the game. And even then, I think it's just a time thing. You don't have enough time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And how about you, Swinny?
So first, the overworld to me was a massive step down, especially with Donkey Kong Country 3. But I know we're not talking about a direct continuation of that. But to me, it just felt like New Super Mario Brothers, and I don't like that style of overworld. But that's just the overworld. I think the secrets were really cool. I'm the same situation as Mike. I was also, because I was on a bit of timer, I wanted to beat the game. I didn't sit there, especially in the last few worlds. Just literally if I accidentally entered a bonus level, I just ran off the edge because I just wanted to quickly just get through. But I did look up...
All business.
I was essentially trying to speedrun. I did look up essentially what entails like the 100 and 200% kind of completion. And it seems really neat. Honestly, trying to get all the stuff on those later levels seems really frustrating, but I think there's a lot there for people that are completionists. I think the secret mini games, to me, the fact that they recycled some of them was a bit disappointing. But because the rest of the game, there's so much in those levels, I understand. But
what you're talking about, the secret mini games, is in when you go through, say, the barrel ones that go.
I'm just saying yes because I know what you're about to say. But to me, it's like why no DK coin? Like to me, that's just like why not bring that back?
DK?
So in the original trilogy, there were these DK coins that were protected by an enemy. Yeah. So you would have to figure out the little mini puzzle to get the DK coin.
Well, not so much like 2. Could just be floating somewhere. 3, it was protected by something. So.
Yeah, like what it evolved to, right? And it does, like, you have to look at Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 when you're looking at this game. And for sure, the overworld was a massive step back for where it got to. Like, if you go play Donkey Kong Country 3, Mike, you'd be, like, blown away. Like, the overworld of that game is, like, so much better. And that's a Super Nintendo game.
Okay.
And it's very cool, and there's, like, little secrets of the overworld itself. And I think one thing I will say is, like, there's a stack of game here, but probably DK2 and DK3 still is the 2 games where I would want to go back and try to get the secrets. Like, I have already done that with DK2, but when I was a kid, but I actually kind of wanted to go back to DK3 after playing this and go, I want to play more of it to get more of the secrets, as we were talking about when that episode came out, because that game's really cool and there's a lot of cool secrets in it. All right, let's go to the bosses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for me, with the bosses overall, like, I do think that they were a lot better in general than the original trilogy, but I didn't really I almost didn't have many of them that really stood out that I actually was like, oh, I really loved. It was more just one boss. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was the World 5 boss where you've got like basically 4 rings with...
Centipede?
No, it's, well, it might have been the Centipede, but it's called Mangorubi Run, where you got to hold onto the grass and bang the little components.
Like the, quote, centipede, unquote, boss.
I didn't realize that you could hit it from underneath. Because I swear, I tried to do that one time and it didn't work, so I just assumed you couldn't. So
well, you can hit those plants from underneath.
Yeah, I know, but it became so much harder because I was trying to do that for a while without that, and then I realized you could, and then I beat it in the next go.
I didn't even know you could do that. Damn it.
Wow. Yeah, you know, exactly.
Wow, the one thing I knew that you guys didn't. Finally.
But Swinny, what were the standout bosses for you? What did you think of the bosses in this game?
Oh, look, I'm only going to mention one specific boss, but to me, bosses were very mixed bag. They had really neat concepts, but they just, especially the last half of the bosses, they just went on way too long.
And
forcing you to replay the easy cycles each time, and these are super predictable cycles. And so it just felt like, I don't know, a lot of bosses like this, but to me, this was just an egregious example of you have to go through all those easy cycles to get to the new phase, to learn what it is, you die, and then you have to repeat the whole cycle, and you're just kind of learning a little bit each time, but you have to go through the long part each time. It just got really frustrating. And then you combine that with some super wonky hitboxes on some of them that were just really just frustrating for me, especially the World 6 boss. That was the boss that was like the thing that ran at the walls, but it had the protective metal plating on it. And the hitbox on that, hitbox on that thing was so frustrating. You have to go through the cycles to wait to get past all these attacks that you couldn't hit him on, just to get to the next part, and then you miss that chance and go through it. It was like Indigo. Do you remember that robot boss in Donkey Kong Country 3?
Oh, yeah, the weird one.
It's like they looked at that boss and said, let's build all their bosses around this concept, whereas if you miss this one opportunity, you've got to wait for this whole cycle of bullcrap each time. And the last boss was just...
Well, can we save the last boss?
Okay,
let's save it. But, you know, I think that this game, during QA, they were just like, the bosses are too ridiculous. Like, not saying that they're super hard, but they're just not like... And I don't want to blame the hitboxes, but it does feel a little bit like that. Like, they're just pretty punishing because the amount of hearts that they'll give you for free is insane.
They were tough bosses. They were really tough bosses.
Like, they were just...
This is really weird. This is so weird because I found the bosses were not a problem at all.
But did you go through the World 6, 7, and 8
No, see, that's the thing. So I didn't do the World 7 and 8.
Oh,
and you also had 3 hearts, though, didn't you?
And I also had 3 hearts.
Makes a huge difference on the bosses.
That is pretty much like, it's almost a different game at that stage.
To me, but still weird. Like, I was screwing up in the game itself, but then the bosses, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't that bad.
Yeah, I think, like,
but the thing is, you're right. It's probably because of the two.
With the bosses,
I
would die normally, but I'd feel like if I had 1 extra heart, I would have been fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. So having 2 extra hearts would be massive because you get 3 per character.
I cheated. unintentionally.
No, you didn't cheat.
Realize.
I actually feel like they felt the game was maybe a bit too silly, like with the 2 hearts.
Yeah,
way it was structured. So
it was probably better balanced with 3. In that
I think so for most people. And then, like me, I just had the option to pick 2, like the original game. So
make it harder.
All right, let's get to the final.
Sorry,
boss.
just before we get to the final boss, I think one thing that I really liked about the game is he had actual world bosses. But he had what I guess you could call mini bosses before that.
Well, a couple, right? It was kind of weird. Yeah.
Well, I would say the squid, the rolling ball.
There's only like 3 from memory.
Oh, so what else did you have? You had the squid, you had the ball, you had... I swear there was more than that.
You're the one raising it.
You had the giant flapping bat that would follow you. That wasn't technically the boss.
No, that's not a mini boss though.
No. But I would consider those, like, I know, where do you draw the line between... That's just, that's a part of the world or the level.
That's the level.
No, I know it's the level, but it's almost like, I feel like it's part of, like, I see them in my head as like a mini boss.
A mini boss is something you have to defeat, you know.
Well, you still have to technically... well, okay, you don't have to defeat them. You have to not get
I don't think we've got time to talk about this. We've got to get through the
But anyway, it's part of the world, but I really like those pieces that look like... kind of like a boss, but it was actually part of the world design.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. as a concept and the way they did it.
Yeah, just going, because I guess, Mike, you didn't finish the game. So just like Sweeney, so just with the final boss, like part of me, and I don't know anything about Tropical Freeze really, I only played a bit of it. I was hoping that the Kremlin, what are they called? Are they called Kremlins?
Yeah.
Is that right? Like from the original trilogy?
Kremlins.
I was kind of like secretly hoping that King K. Rool would come back or something like that in the final boss, because I wasn't sure if he did or didn't. But it was, what was it? Tiki Tong was the final boss.
I don't even remember his
This thing,
name.
dude, like I found the game hard, but I never like ran out of lives or anything like that until the final boss. And dude, I was playing it and I'm like, I'm going to run out of lives. Like I'm going to get a game over here at some stage.
No joke. So it was like 1:30 at night. I'm like, I got to beat this game, right?
Like you're talking about last night, like less than 12 hours ago.
I had 20 lives.
Yeah.
I beat the boss with 0 lives remaining.
Oh, on your last life?
On my last life.
So you had 20 goes and beat it.
Wow.
That's pretty decent.
I don't even know what would have happened, because the annoying part about that last boss, and I don't know if you'd have to replay this, you have to go through this bloody rocket section to begin the boss as well. Now, each time you replay, you don't. But then if I died, would I have to do that bloody box?
Dude, can I just say, I had the exact same thought as you. So I was going to go back and get more lives or something before the boss, but then it takes you back post the rocket scene. And I was like, I don't want to do that rocket thing again. So I just kept playing it. And I was like hopeful that I'd have enough lives.
But this boss, it's like they said, it's like they just gave up at this point and they go, okay, that boss in Mario 64 and Shifting Sandlands with the two big, like the big boss with the two hands with the like weak points in the middle.
Or Smash Brothers.
Or, yeah. So let me, like, basically, the Shadow Temple boss from Ocarina of Time, the exact same thing. And let's add those in, let's add some Master Hand moves from Smash Brothers. That's our boss. It was, to me, there's that trope of a giant boss with two hands, like The Messenger is a game where they do a better original take on that. I know that game's much newer than this, but still, this felt like the most generic boss, and it was just... Man, it was tough. And once you kind of learnt the tricks to it, like the fact that when he does the move where it slaps the two hands together, the fact that you can go and jump and bounce on the hand to avoid it.
So I didn't know that until like 20 lives later.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh my God, now I'm going to stop dying this stupid move.
The thing is, Mike, in this one, it's seriously all about understanding the tricks. So there's two big arms or two hands and they slap you or they like smack you or all these things, right? If you don't know the tricks and how to avoid the attacks, it kind of gives you enough lives that you can keep progressing and kind of taking lives off him, but not enough to actually beat it.
Okay.
So to me, it was never obvious that, I'm doing the wrong thing or something. So like one of them you can duck. I didn't realize you could duck at Sweeney. I was like, what am I doing
Which
wrong
one can
here?
you duck? The one where it does the two hands across?
Yeah,
I didn't know
that
you
one.
could duck that. No.
Yeah, I was trying to jump it, and I'm like, oh my God. When I found out I could duck it, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, but I was using that opportunity to try and land on the actual weak point. But
yeah, I wasn't that good to do that. Because then also the hitbox for that was so quick.
The hitboxes in general, the bosses. It's just fuck this boss. Seriously, like I hate this boss so much.
It's a horrible boss, dude.
I don't know if I've heard you swear before. That must be really bad.
Dude, it was. It's like, I think I had 50 lives and then I was like running out. I'm like, oh my God. I think I beat it with like 20 lives to go. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. I was sweating.
I know, again, like, I can't talk about this, but lives seem to be... Okay, I had 3 lives, so that makes it a hell of a lot easier. But I also had...
Hearts.
Hearts, sorry. I also had 250 coins to buy lives with.
I never used any coins and I regretted it.
Yeah, you can buy lives with it.
You can buy so many lives that I felt, will I ever actually reach game over? Because 250, whatever the translation rate is, you could buy a ton of.
Well, you only max out on 99 lives, so I could see someone losing 99 lives on the final boss. To be honest, it's so frustrating.
Damn. Wow.
It's really frustrating. And then you can't kind of put it down because I don't want to go through the rocket section again leading up to the boss.
You know what I was going to do?
Like
if I died, I was just going to turn the game off and come do the show saying I just gave up.
Really? Yeah, I guess you were on 0 lives because I never got a game over screen, so I don't know how that all works.
I was so happy when I beat it on that. I was like,
that's cool, dude. That's
what
clutch.
happens?
That's clutch.
Do you actually lose the game or not?
No, most of the games, they just put you back, with 5 lives or something like that.
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Yeah, but so they're all the bosses. We're running long, so do you want to just briefly touch on the graphics and music? So graphics, I thought it was really, really cool. Like I loved the design of these games, like on the 3DS and Wii.
Especially on the 3DS, yeah. And the fact that, we talked about how you had multi-dimensional parts of the level where you could go to the background and do things. I like that, especially in 3DS, the fact that you had that perspective and it felt like it. Or when you get launched with a barrel into the perspective, it looks so cool on a 3DS.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was designed for the 3DS.
And Sweeney, how do you think it stood up against the original trilogy?
This game's absolutely gorgeous. It's just kind of just let down by the Wii's resolution a bit and the overall jankiness. But it ran at a really nice 60 frames a second with a little bit of slowdown. But overall, I thought it was a really nice looking game.
Yeah, I feel like this is, I know it's so almost trope to say this by now, but, this game is so perfect on the Switch. Like if it came to the Switch, remaster.
It'd be awesome on the Switch. Yeah.
Like especially if they could do AI upscaling of the images or graphics or whatever, it would look insane. You wouldn't even. I honestly don't think you'd need to do much to this game.
Intergot, you may know this, but Mike, what if I told you there was a version of Donkey Kong Country Returns that was the best of everything?
What?
I can guess what you're going to say.
And it was not released.
Emulated?
It was not released on a Nintendo console either.
What?
So,
let me guess. Is this the NVIDIA Shield in China?
So,
what?
In 2019, the NVIDIA Shield in China got a port of this game that was running at 1080p, no motion controls, 60 frames.
Oh. That's the version I should have played.
Anyway,
and Mike, that is the NVIDIA Shield. Just so you know, it's basically the same chipset as the Switch.
Yeah.
So crazy, dude. So crazy.
That's nuts.
So final thing music? Before we go to overall.
Music.
So music,
I love the music, man. I really did.
It's so interesting because you didn't play the original. No. You got to understand, Mike, that the original is literally some of the best music ever for video games. So I like Sweeney. I just felt it was kind of like, it was music. It was good. I didn't think anything blew me away.
The music is solid. The best moments are the callbacks to Donkey Kong Country 1 specifically. So the title theme, Jungle Hijinks, and the end level theme. The end level theme, like this victory theme, they're all directly from Donkey Kong Country 1, just with a new touch of musical paint on them. Really good, but the new tracks are just a little pedestrian. Doesn't live up to the SNES soundtrack. To me, the biggest problem is that a bunch of stages, especially it seemed like later on, had the same music back to back for levels. So I think 3 of the lava levels had the same music track, whereas I'm not used to that Donkey Kong Country. They usually spice it up and they make it as a different song each level. And some of the stuff sounded very Metroid Prime-ish, which makes sense. But that's not a bad thing.
Was the same composer as Metroid Prime?
Not sure, but there's like some kind of like chanting stuff. It's very much Metroid Prime-y. So I like the music, but it's nothing compared to the original. I've heard Tropical Freeze is pretty good though. So
Tropical Freeze was cool from the start that I played it.
And Mike, definitely check out Donkey Kong Country soundtracks like on YouTube or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the soundtrack on today while I do.
But it is interesting that you thought it was awesome. So it does show how much playing the original kind of colors everything.
Well, no, look, if I was to play the originals, I would probably love them more than I did this. I think the only reason I like these is it didn't feel like music from a game from 2010. It felt like music from a game from the 90s. And I like that.
Maybe that's what they were going for, yeah.
So I think maybe that's what they were. It just reminded me of some of the games that I played that weren't even, Donkey Kong games or anything. I remember there was a game called Karma Curse of the 12 Caves, which is like this puzzly kind of mystish type of game, and it some of the music for some reason just reminded me of that, and it brought back memories of the 90s, and that's why I think I really like the music. I remember like just thinking about it, as in most of the time sometimes I forget about the music or I don't really think about it in a lot of ways, but the fact that I actually consciously thought, hey, I don't mind the music in this, it's kind of cool, is a testament that I think it's quite cool for someone that's new to the genre or new to the game.
So, we are running long. So, just overall thoughts for this game. Succinctly, like I would put this game, if I put Donkey Kong Country 1 on one tier, I'd probably put this game on the tier above. And then the tier above that would be like Donkey Kong Country 3 and 2. That's kind of how I think about this game. I really, really liked it. I think it's better than Donkey Kong Country 1, obviously. But I just don't think it reached the heights of Donkey Kong Country 2 or even 3, which is interesting because I just played that last year, right, Swinny? Or was it this year? I'm like losing track.
Last year.
Last year, okay. Last year. For the first time, which is weird given, I mean, all the way through. I'd always played it, but not all the way through. So how about you, Mike? Where did you land on this game overall?
Compared to the other ones?
No, just as a game.
No,
you're new to the series.
I actually really liked it. I thought the difficulty curve was a bit annoying as we spoke about, and I was battling with the controls too much. But I'm really glad I played it, and I think what's probably going to happen now is I'm going to have to go back and actually play. Sounds like number one is maybe. Should I skip that, or should I just go 1, 2, and 3 and actually play them?
I think
all?
Swinny would say no, but I would probably say yeah. I'd say just play Donkey Kong Country 2.
My suggestion last time was to maybe play the first world just to see what it was like, and then move to number
that's
2
what
and
he said,
3.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
that's fair.
cool.
That's fair.
I did actually, and I think I ended up playing the first world, but I just wasn't sure if it's worth playing through the whole thing in that sense, or if it's too difficult and I'll give up before I actually get to 2 and 3. But I really enjoyed it, to be honest. It didn't feel it felt frustrating at times, but it didn't feel like a chore. It felt like, hey, I really wanted to give this thing a go as someone who wasn't really exposed to this game in my childhood, and I'm really glad I did. I thought it was a really enjoyable experience overall. So
Yeah, just to add to that point, I totally agree with your wording of chore. Like this game felt like a bit of a joy and a breeze to play for me. Like it was difficult, but it was just really fun to just play at any time. Like I never felt, oh, I got to play this game. Like I just liked coming back to it and just get through it. So, and how about you, Swinny?
So, to me, I put this game just slightly below Donkey Kong Country 1 on my list for a very specific reason. So, up until that first, like, 3/4 of the game, it would have been better. But then just the late game stuff, I just think was just poorly designed. And then you combine that with the issues that I had with the controls in the Wii version, that it just notches it down slightly. But, I mean, like, it has some banger levels. Ultimately that decision to force the waggle controls just really brought the overall decision down. But it's definitely worth playing. If they do ever release a version on the Switch, then, man, that would be a game to play.
Yeah, it feels like a total no-brainer. So just to call out, in episode 52, so the 11th of July, we're going to go through Tropical Freeze. So that's in line with the 40th anniversary of Donkey Kong itself. And also 1 week before our 1 year anniversary for the podcast, which is pretty cool. So yeah, like I'm actually really fascinated to see where Tropical Freeze will land. Because I feel like Tropical Freeze is like kind of what this game could be if it just had traditional controls and style and everything like that. And, also just to give you this sneak preview, in Tropical Freeze, you can play as other characters in it, which I was kind of shocked when I started playing this, realizing you can only play as Donkey Kong. So that's Donkey Kong Country Returns. So